All right. So, ladies and gents, we're going to pick up where we left off in the cell membrane. You recall that's a membrane protein in there?
Are we redrawing that?
Yes, because we're going to add a few more things to it. Okay?
Okay.
If you recall, we had... What were these things called?
Bilayers.
Yeah, the whole thing's a bilayer. This individual piece was a what? Phospholipid. Which was special because it's polar on one end and non-polar on the other. This thing right here was a what?
That is I don't know. Oh, it's a membrane protein.
Membrane protein. Okay. Couple more things I want to add here. In between here, we're going to have these little, they kind of look like chains that are locked together here. But note where I'm putting them. Is that in the polar or the non-polar area? That's in the non-polar area, which means that these molecules that I'm sticking in here are non-polar.
Aren't those carbohydrates?
Close. It's one of the two things we watched in the Cell Defender game the other day. Not Cell Defender. The other. It starts with a C, but it's not carbohydrates. Cholesterol. Okay. Cholesterol makes the membrane rigid. Okay? Otherwise the membrane gets a little too floppy and it doesn't do a good job. These things rigid, it's stabilized. Stabilizes the membrane. So they help to stabilize. Now, I'm going to add a few of these chains to the outside here. And these can do a number of different things. Kind of look like a weird tree hanging out there, a few branches coming off of it. That right there is what? Carbohydrate. Yeah. Carbohydrate. This thing is responsible for a couple different things. One, it can receive chemical messages or allow the cell.
Does that make membrane rigid?
Yeah, allow the cell to stick to stabilize. It's going to stabilize it. Yeah. Okay, so the carbohydrates will receive chemical messages, or receptors will receive chemical messages. Proteins can do that too sometimes. They also allow the cell to stick to other cells. So if this one is going to be stuck next to, and in the body we have lots and lots of cells that are stuck to other cells. These things help with that process too.
Wait, what is that thing in parentheses again?
The what now?
The thing in parentheses for cholesterol.
Oh, right here. Stabilize. Stabilize.
Is that what Gatorade has in it?
What's that?
Carbohydrate.
Yeah, there's carbohydrates. Now, going back to what we talked about, this is no different than the carbohydrates that we talked about in our notes. Starches and fibers, things that are made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. This is just where you're going to find another example where you'd find one in a cell. Okay. Now, I should draw a line here because we need to talk about a concept here that you've probably heard of already, and then we're going to go back to it. Okay, and I hate to do this because it's a weird segue, but it's important. It's called diffusion. Diffusion.
Yeah.
Okay. Diffusion is not specific to the cell membrane. Diffusion happens all the time, okay? It is any time particles are moving from high concentration to low concentration. There's at least 1,000 examples of it happening right now in this room. Most notable of which for me, what I can smell through my stuffy nose, is coffee. Okay? Particles of that coffee, as soon as I open the bag and put it in that bowl, particles of it are aromatic. They're small enough to travel through the air. So as soon as they go into the air, they're going from that area of high concentration, which is in the bag, to the low concentration, which is in the room. Now this might be throwing you off. You're like, well, what's the fluid there? The fluid is air. Air and other gases are also fluids. So you think fluids, you drink plenty of fluids, you think liquids. All liquids are also fluids, but all gases are fluids as well. So movement of particles from areas of high concentration to low concentration in a fluid. So anytime any particles are moving through the air or through a liquid, it's diffusion. And this is a natural tendency. They're going to move from high to low. That's just what they naturally do because those particles are in motion. And like the video talked about, Hank's brother John doesn't like to be around a whole bunch of other people, really close to other people, so he tries to separate or create space. Molecules and particles try to do the same thing. So let's start with the simplest example here.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can they move low to high instead of high to low?
Not in diffusion. No. It takes energy to go the other way. Okay? Then it's not diffusion. That's a good question. So if we got a beaker here, this is a terrible looking beaker. Okay? Alright. I'll label it. This is a beaker. Alright. Beaker. Okay? Water. If I put a drop of food coloring in here, okay, it won't take very long before that food coloring does what? It would fill the container. And it would continue doing that until it filled the entire container equally. Movement of particles from high concentration to low concentration in a fluid.
Food coloring.
Yeah, that doesn't look like it, but it is. Let me see if I can demonstrate this. See if I can grab a little.
What are those air? What? Can you go down to the right and let my go on?
Okay, give me a second. What? So random. Alright, gang, I found some. So, sorry to our viewers at home who are seeing this large gap of space in between the two, but because that's how I roll. Alright, so if I add a drop of food coloring here, it won't take very long, but we will eventually get down to where all of this is evenly distributed on its own. From the side, you see the particles in there are trying to reach an equilibrium there.
If you stir it, will it help it?
Absolutely. Stirring will help the diffusion process. Just like if I had fans in this room and I wanted the coffee smell to go faster in the room from one end to the other, I could shoot it across the room with a fan, okay? not the coffee, but the smell. Well, either one technically, but there we go. You can see those. It doesn't look like it's still moving, but all of this stuff in here, all the little bits of it are still trying to get around there. And so we can come back and check on it a little bit. There's some things that would make it go faster too. If it was, if I added more of it, it would diffuse a little more quickly. If I stirred it up, if I heated it up, so there's factors that can influence the rate of diffusion. Let's add another color here. Maybe red. Do I have any red? There we go. Now it just looks like someone got killed. Okay. I won't make you sit and stare at this forever. I'm going to set it to the side and we'll check on it just here in a little bit and see how it did. Okay? But I don't want to do much else to it though. Oh, nice. Got it. Isn't that brilliant? Okay. Yeah. So I tried to illustrate here, and then I showed you with that what happens. Okay? Folks, diffusion is occurring all of the time in living things. Inside of the cells, in your bloodstream, so on and so forth. If you're taking any, well, you had breakfast hopefully this morning. If not, you should have. Those particles get absorbed by your intestines of the food into your bloodstream. That diffuses into your bloodstream. It diffuses from your bloodstream into your cells, so your cells have nutrients. Livia, question?
Do you mind moving it back up? I didn't get what the carb said at the very top.
Sure. So, folks, diffusion is really, really important to living things. Now, it can travel through the air, it can travel through liquids, but, you know, medicines, the way that medicines work is they diffuse inside the body to get to the areas where they're supposed to. Now, they get some help from your bloodstream to carry them, but, you know, they have to diffuse. So let's look at a few different things about diffusion here, okay? Diffusion across the cell membrane. Diffusion can occur through the phospholipids if, and again this is reiterating the same point, if particles are what? If the particles that are diffusing are, there's two requirements. What were they? What's the two requirements?
Oh, polar.
Small and non-polar.
The small and non-polar. Otherwise, particles must diffuse through membrane proteins.
Just say fold down.
Where you at?
Right there, FOD. With the beaker.
Beaker? Oh, food coloring. Yeah, it's supposed to be food coloring. Okay. Otherwise, particles must diffuse through membrane proteins. Proteins are specific as to what they will allow. Example.
What is that?
Yeah, but you're focusing. That's the good part.
What does that say, Mr. Holly? Otherwise, particles must diffuse through
Must diffuse through membrane proteins.
Mr. Helly, he takes power.
Particles are specific
What's the rest of that say?
Proteins, it's proteins
As
are
to
specific
what
as
they
to
will
what
allow.
Yeah. Example, some.
Where you at? Here? Otherwise?
Oh my god,
Do you guys want me to switch pens?
How do you guys not read that?
I
Really not the best
That's basically how I read it. Oh, I like your pen.
Oh, that's so pretty. Is that like your favorite pen?
Yes.
That's like 17.
I need to get a pen.
As to what they will allow.
Did you have to take a class to do that?
Uh-uh.
Oh, that's so nice. Except I can't read it. Oh, proteins are specific to water. These are called isoforms.
Yeah, that's a weird word anyway. They're called aquaporins.
How do you spell that?
A-Q-U-A-P-O. Called
Writing all
aquaporins.
caps, Mr. Hyde. That will help a lot.
That's why I write in all caps on the board.
Yeah, you should write in all caps on your paper too.
That sounds really weird.
Sorry.
Okay.
Those are called.
Aquaporins.
Where it says two water. It looks really pretty. Sorry, Mr. Hanley.
I'm not listening to you.
Concentration. Oh, high concentration.
Oh, he wrote it right under it.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Oh, that's so pretty. Where'd you get that pen?
My mom gave this to me.
Oh.
It's a calligraphy pen. I use it when I write my journal.